Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. In this video I'll show you how to make this cool end grain cutting board. But during the process of building this I did make a big mistake. Can you tell what it is? No? Well, there isn't really anything wrong with the end result. Well, the mistake lies in the assembly process. Let me know if you find it. Otherwise, please enjoy the video. Right, let's start cutting some material. The dark one, the Vinge, is going to be 2mm by 38mm and around 38 centimeters long. But we'll leave that to later. The beech and the mahogany is going to be the exact same size. 35 by 38 millimeters and 38 centimeters long. And we need 6 pieces of each sort. Let's cut them on the bandsaw. Now we got all the parts for the first glue up. This is the layout for my first glue up, but I do have a small problem. For my planer is only 38 centimeters wide, and this piece, when it's sitting like this, is about 45 centimeters wide. So I can't get it through in one go. So I have to break it up in 2 pieces. Something like this. But for those of you who's got a belt sander or a planer that can take the whole width, there's no issue, you glue it together as shown here. This will be the setup for my glue up, and I'm using 2 sacrifice pieces for these ends right here, as they're going to be joined together later. So I don't want these edges to be ruined by clamp marks. The first glue up is done. I've cleaned them up and put them through my planer and planed them down to 35mm thickness. Next step now is glue these 2 parts together, simply like this. And after that we can make some nice cross cuts. The glue up of the 2 pieces turned out pretty good. The cross cut now will determine the height of the board. I make mine between 35 or 40mm thick. But whatever you prefer will be fine. Now, I'm not saying you should, I'm just saying you could cheat a little bit. So what do I mean by cheating? Well, we could just cut 8 pieces more of this and then put that in between our cross cut. That would be fairly easy. I can easily see that this is very tempting, but would I do it? Probably not. If it was a cutting board for myself and only for myself, I'll probably do it. But if it was to a customer, I'll probably do it the right way. And the right way, meaning, well, it has to be end grain, so we can't really use these. So let me show you how to make the thin slabs in end grain. It does take a bit more work, but it will be worth it. Here I've got my Vinge. I'm going to cut 8 or 9 pieces, and the thickness will be around 40mm. This will be the same as the cross cut that we'll make later on. So I actually needed 12 pieces to cover the length of the board. Let me show you. To get the end grain strips that I need, I'll glue all these together. So I'll get some nice strips that will cover the whole length of the board. The glue up was perfect. All I really need now is just to sand it, and then it's ready to cut the thin strips on the circular saw. Now for the thin strips in Vinge. I've got my circular saw set up. I did make an extra one when we did the last ones, so I'll use that as a distance piece, so I get the exact same distance on these ones. Something like this. Let's give it a go. Alright guys, we're almost ready for the next glue up, but there's a few options that we can choose pattern wise. Well, this is pattern number 1, and pattern number 2, pattern number 3, and pattern number 4, and pattern number 5. As you see, there's a lot of different patterns that you can choose, but I really like this one, so this is the one that I'm going with. Now, before I start the glue up, I'll cut off these pieces right here, so I got the exact width. This also means that I could put these on when I do the glue up, and I can clamp them together to keep the pattern as it is. The final glue up turned out great, and the next thing now is to flatten the board. Now, running end grain through a planer is normally not advisable, but if you do have a helicoil cutter head like this, it would be okay. But if you do have a single blade going across, I strongly recommend not to do it. An important piece of advice before you do put it through your planer. You need to glue on a sacrifice piece at the end so the end grain doesn't chip and split when you put it through the planer. I've run the board over my jointer like 10 times because I'm barely touching it. And now it's time to flip the machine into my planer and take the top side. The planing went well. The next thing we'll do is clean up all the edges and of course cut off the sacrifice piece here. I've cleaned the board up and made an angle cut all the way around for about 20 degrees. And now it's time to make the rounding on the top. Alright, next step is the sanding. I'll start with a grade 80, 100, 120 and 150. I've sanded everything nicely, and now for the absolute best part of the build, the oil. I'll give it a few coats of mineral oil first, and then I'll finish off with some beeswax. I love the way the colors just comes to life. This is the third coat. It can't take much more oil, and I'll remove all the excess oil with a cloth and let it dry a day or two before we apply the beeswax. Wow, the colors really came to life after the mineral oil. The final touch now will be a few coats of beeswax. The final touch before it's done, I'll put these small rubber feet on. And there we go, we're done. Turned out pretty good.